Hey everybody, Matthias here, and today I want to talk to you about the movie Frozen 2. As I record this, many of us are stuck in our homes with COVID-19, but not everything sucks. People and corporations are trying to do their part to build some goodwill. You can watch operas from the Met, you can watch orchestral performances by the Seattle Orchestra. You can even have Olaf himself, actor Josh Gad, read bedtime stories to you. Or your kids. Disney doesn't want to be left out either, so they've started making plans to release several movies early to their streaming platforms and also to rental platforms. One of the first movies they released early was Frozen 2 to their Disney Plus platform, which is why I finally got to see it last weekend as I'm recording this, and is pretty good. Now I get to talk about why it's such an excellent follow-up to the 2013 hit film Frozen. Pretty much all of the spoilers are going to be up for grabs after the break as I discuss the top 10 things about Frozen 2 in today's From the Hawk's Eye. Number 10 on our list is the villain, or lack thereof. So I want to be clear that this isn't like a good writing, bad writing thing. Having a physical villain is perfectly acceptable in most stories. Any story, really. It could have been fine in this story. But choosing not to use a real villain that they could face to face was an interesting choice, and it's something you don't get to see a lot, so it was something that I particularly enjoyed. And it makes sense as a follow-up to a movie where the villain was really more of a B-plot, and the real story was about accepting oneself and being true to oneself. So the conflict of this movie is in finding out that maybe some of the things that you've believed about your ancestors or believed about the history or of your culture are not necessarily true sometimes. And yes, technically there is a villain in this movie. The grandpa, the like king 2 generations ago, is a villainous person, but you don't confront him face to face. They don't confront him. They just deal with the aftermath of the things that he's done, and that's what I mean when I say that this movie doesn't really have a villain. I suspect that a villainless plot is probably generally harder to write than a plot with a true villain. That you could just face to face and then you defeat him and that's your win. Especially in a children's movie where you generally try to keep things a little bit simpler so the kids can keep up. But I think it really pays off, and we'll talk about that more as we get to some of the other numbers in this list. So number 9 on my list of favorite things about this movie is the flipped gender role models, as it were. So generally in movies, what you'll see a man or men out doing adventurous things, and then you'll see women. They might be out doing the adventurous things also, but typically they're more focused on their relationship to the men. And this is actually true of a lot of movies. That's why there was this thing invented called the Bechdel test, which is a test that asks, does this movie contain at least 2 female characters that have a conversation with each other that is about anything other than a man or men. It seems like it's a pretty simple test to pass. It's not always. For example, one of my favorite Disney movies growing up, Aladdin, does not really pass this test. The only real female character is Jasmine, and so she doesn't have any other women characters to talk to. There are the women in the opening song, One Step Ahead, and they may show up some other times, but they're not really characters and they don't really have conversations. So again, Aladdin would fail the Bechdel test. Now, Frozen 2 fails what I would call the anti-Bechdel test, which just flip it on its head. Are there 2 male characters that talk to each other about anything other than a woman or women? And the answer is this movie does have multiple male characters, but pretty much every time Kristoff is the only one who really interacts in between the men, and pretty much he talks to anyone, it's about Anna, which is, if this was flipped around, like when you fail the Bechdel test, that's usually problematic, but in this case, men get the limelight so often for doing different things that I don't think it's a problem here. Maybe you could argue that it could be better, but for me, I just kind of laughed and went, how about that? That's pretty funny that happened that way. And so beyond that, you'll also see that Elsa and Anna, I'm forgetting how to say her name. They're the ones that go on the adventure in this movie entirely. Kristoff, at least in the first one, he was with Anna as she was going on her adventure, but not this time. This time he gets left behind, which does kind of suck for him and leads to a really good song that he gets to sing. The real focus of this movie is again, as far as relationships go, is really on those sisterly relationships, which is something that's nice to see. There's so many movies that focus so heavily on those romantic relationships. It's always nice to see one that'll focus on just anything else, honestly. Not that there's anything wrong, again, with romantic relationships, but variety is the spice of life. Number 8 on my list of favorite things about this movie is that Elsa has learned in the intervening time between Frozen and Frozen 2, she's learned very well how to control her magic. She is 100% in control of that magic, and it's great. And she's also a huge role model for all these kids. So what does she do with her magic? She never uses it for violence. She only uses it in defense and to help people. And again, I'm not necessarily saying that movies or TV shows where people use magic aggressively are bad, but it's great to see, like, kids get a role model who's like, you know what, I have these magical powers, but I don't have to hurt people. And even though she faces situations where violence might even be warranted in self-defense, she chooses to try to be understanding, and that leads to a pacification of the wind element and the fire element, where she uses magic to stop it, but not to harm it. And she could use ice magic directly in the salamander, and it would probably hurt it, but she chooses not to. Instead, she just keeps putting out the fires and showing it that, like, you are not going to be able to destroy everything, just give up. And then it comes over and it is also pacified. Number 7. So many movies in the position that this movie is in would try to pad their runtime a little bit by making Captain Matthias be something of a secondary villain, where he's trying to do the right thing. As I'm specifically thinking of when Anna is using the Iron Giants to destroy, or not the Iron Giants, that's something else entirely, the Stone Giants to the Earth Giants to destroy the dam in order to basically save everyone. Other movies would have had Captain Matthias go, no, this dam was a gift and we can't destroy it, we have to protect it, blah, 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 and there would have been this whole argument, blah, and it would have padded runtime, and it would have been interesting, and it would have been really frustrating, especially for adult audience members. I think kid audience members would have just been caught up in the drama of it all and not really been paying attention necessarily, but adult audience members, it would have been extremely frustrating for her. It would have been extremely frustrating for me. Instead, Captain Matthias looks at Anna, and he says, we have to destroy this dam? Okay, then we'll work with you. And he starts, banging his shield and gets everybody else to bang their shields. Bring the Stone Giants, the Earth Giants over here. Let's destroy this dam. This is what we got to do. And it's so refreshing to just be like, you know what? We don't need to waste time with this pointless arc. Like, the captain, ultimately, General Matthias' character is just really nice to me because he never doubts them. He never questions their legitimacy, Anna or Elsa's legitimacy to rule or their orders. He's just like, okay, y'all are in charge. I believe you. And when you give me an order, I'm going to do it. And I appreciate that so much, to just have a character who's like, listen, they're trying to do the right thing. I'm supposed to do what they say. Like, we're not in conflict here, and he just does it. It's great. Number 6. The movie has fun, good foreshadowing. It does lean on it a little heavily, especially at the end, but it is a kids' movie, so you gotta make sure the kids are keeping up, right? And that, of course, is Olaf's trivia game as they set off on their adventure. And one of the first things Olaf says is, water has memory. And they're like, I don't believe you. And he's like, no, water totally has memory. Trust me. And it turns out it does. So it helps, it leads to basically everything in this movie. Nothing works if water doesn't have memory. And him setting it up in that unassuming way is just gorgeous, because it's just like, you might be right, I don't know, things work differently in this world, but it introduces that idea into your head, so when you see it, you're like, oh, well, Olaf was right. And it doesn't do it in a way that's like, that's too overbearing, where it's like, no, water having a memory is going to be important. It just plants that seed and then lets that seed grow, and it's great. And so you get to where, oh, we don't know what happened to our parents or what happened in this forest. Oh, well, the water does. Just freeze some wind and you'll get some hints. Oh, I don't know why the fight started. Oh, well, the water in this glacier does. So just, go ask it and it'll tell you. Oh, Olaf died. Like, we can rebuild him, but he won't be Olaf. Aha! The water remembers. So water remembers being Olaf. Oh, I'm going to break this dam and the water's going to destroy Arendelle. No, the water remembers that the Arendellians have been good people, and especially Queen Elsa and Princess Anna have been good leaders. And so it's like, we don't need to destroy you. You've improved. You are better than you were before. Because water remembers. It's just like water remembers. Just over and over and over again. And it's all just set up by that silly little thing from Olaf. And it's just great. Number 5. One of my favorite things in any storytelling medium is when you can accomplish more than one thing at a time. So in the last example, that was actually a decent example, because Olaf was just entertaining us, but he was also foreshadowing what was going to happen in the movie. So this next one is that I want to talk about, where they did a whole bunch of things at one time, was Anna and Olaf's duet towards the beginning of the movie, called Some Things Never Change. Now, the first thing I noticed about it, is that it's a callback to Anna's first song, her first duet in Frozen 1, where she sings that song about being in love with Hans, and she has lyrics like being in perfect harmony, but then the animation, the choreography, if it weren't an animated movie, shows that they're not in sync. They almost bump into each other, right? So so this does the same thing, in that she's talking about like some things never change, and the visuals keep showing us things changing. So it's a good callback in the sense that Anna is wrong again. She wants to believe this thing, and previous Disney movies have set up this thing to a degree to exist, but she wants to believe this thing exists, but it doesn't really work that way. Some things do never change, but a lot of things do, even things that you think wouldn't change, like a giant tree that's been there forever could get cut down, and that changes. And so it calls back to her being wrong about this thing that she believed in the first movie. It also sets up the conflict of this movie, where things are going to change, and they're going to resist this change. All of them are going to resist this change. They're all very scared about the change. Anna's worried about Elsa. Elsa's worried about this voice she's hearing and how this is going to change her. Kristoff wants to get married, and he's worried about that change. And Olaf is concerned with the change that's going to occur as he grows older. For the most part, Olaf is looking forward to growing older, but he's also a little bit concerned about it. So it sets up that conflict as well. And it's just always nice when you could do more than one thing at a time. And having that callback, that familiarity of Frozen 1 show up early in this movie to be like, no, see, this is still Frozen. We're still Frozen. It's Frozen 2. We're still Frozen. But then also to set up, okay, where are we going from here? It was a really good touch. Really, really great way to work that all in. Really great use of the music. Number 4, the respect for the indigenous people shown in this movie. Now, the original Frozen started with a chant called the Welya, which was written by a member of the Sami tribe, and I did look those pronunciations up, so I hope I'm getting those right. But the song was written by a member of the Sami tribe, which is an indigenous people up in Norway. They're actually all over that whole area, but I'm bad at geography, so I don't even know what to call that. But just trust me, they're everywhere, but specifically for our purposes, we recognize that they are in Norway, because a lot of the visuals in these movies are Norwegian, are inspired by Norway. Norway locations, Norway general existence. And Disney, the thing about this is that the song wasn't just written by a Sami person. It used an ancient is it ancient? I don't know. It's a Sami vocal technique called the yoik. And that was banned for a while when Norway underwent Christianization and the Sami people were Christianized. And so there was a lot of questions about, like, does Disney have any business using this song that was created by an indigenous people, and like, they weren't allowed to use it for themselves for a long time without possibly being in trouble. And now Disney shows up and they're just like, well, just throw this in our movie. We won't even talk to you, won't credit you, won't anything. So Disney kind of screwed up with Frozen 1. And some of Kristoff's outfit was inspired by the Sami people. They're reindeer herders. They're actually the only people legally allowed to herd reindeer in Norway because of ancient, what's the word I'm looking for? Treaties. So, or not ancient, old treaties, I guess. I keep using this word ancient. If it's more than 50 years old, it's ancient to me. I'm stupid sometimes. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Anyway, so Disney screwed up in Frozen 1 by kind of appropriating this song without really talking to any of the Sami people about, like, what they were doing or why, or whether it was cool with them. And that's not unexpected for a giant corporation. It happens on a fairly regular basis, which kind of sucks. However, Disney did something that was a little unexpected in that they tried to make up for it. They went back to the Sami people as they were doing Frozen 2, where the Sami people came to them. I'm not sure, like, who went where first, but ultimately they signed a contract and said, listen, we're going to represent you in Frozen 2. We're going to do it as authentically and respectfully as we can. To that end, we're going to listen to your experts. We're going to talk to you about everything we're doing, and we're going to make this happen. And then finally, they agreed to release a version of the movie that was localized in the Sami spoken language, which I can't remember what it's called right now, but that was the thing they were going to do. And not only were they going to do it, but it was going to release at the same time as the Norwegian localization, so that the Sami could feel as if they were equal to the non-indigenous population of Norway, which was really cool. And by all accounts, the Sami people have been very happy with how Disney approached and ultimately followed through on this agreement. Every report I've seen has shown that they are extremely happy with what Disney did, and that Disney followed through on everything they said they were going to do. Because not only did Disney do all of those things, they did have the Northumbran people are based on the Sami people, and they paint them respectfully and in a good light, and their clothing, their tools, their everything is based on Sami stuff. So that's awesome. But what they also did was they wrote a plot about a little bit of a kind of an anti-colonialism plot. So in this case, the king, 2 kings ago, I forgot his name too. He ain't important. He don't deserve to have his name remembered. Gave a dam as a gift to the Northumbran people. Only it turns out that the dam was actually sapping the life from their enchanted forest, sapping the magic from it, which is what causes all of the issues. And he did it as a trick. Like, it was supposed to be this gift, but he did it intentionally to sap their magic so he could attack them. And so, this is a story that you're not going to see a lot in movies, where it's like, yeah, sometimes colonizers do nasty things to indigenous peoples. But then it keeps on going to, like, hey, sometimes, even though we weren't the people that did the wrong thing to the indigenous people, we got to make it right. And so that's where Elsa and Anna come in. Elsa hears the voice, finds out what happened. She tells Anna. Anna smashes the dam, even though she thinks it will destroy her castle. Now, and then the story goes on, where it turns out the spirits are like, hey, listen, we know you two are doing the best you can. The people are descendants of the people. Like, we don't need to destroy your stuff. Like, you just got to give us back you just need to give the Northumbran people back their opportunity to be who they are. So that is a really interesting storyline where Disney wasn't just respectful of the Sami people and didn't just, like, borrow from their culture to create a culture in this movie, but they were also wrote a whole narrative about how there should be more respect paid to indigenous peoples. And I'm just all kinds of impressed by that. Which takes us to number 3, which is that there were multiple morals in this story. Now, the way I originally wrote the script, all that stuff about the moral of the respect to indigenous peoples was supposed to be in this section, so this section is going to be a little bit shorter, a little bit smaller than I meant it to be, because I already covered all that stuff, and it's just, a different organization, because I'm trying out a different way of doing things. But, so it has that moral, but it also, just to kind of rewind, and this is why I did it the other way originally in the script, sorry for breaking the fourth wall for you, you expect a Disney movie to have a moral, like, Disney animated movies have morals. They're usually pretty simple morals. In this case, in the case of the first Frozen, the moral was, be yourself. Don't necessarily hold yourself back just because other people are intimidated by you. Especially empowering for women, young women, girls, whoever, who often are asked to hold themselves back so that they don't embarrass men or boys. So that was a cool moral, but it was on the most it was very simple on the basic layer. You could take it deeper, like I just kind of did, but on the basic level, it was believe in yourself, be yourself. It'll work out better that way. Now with Frozen 2, I told you about the more complex moral that's also in there of the respect to indigenous peoples, but they also did have that simpler moral on the surface layer for the kids to take in, which was that change happens and it's scary, but it doesn't always work out bad, because by the end of the movie, Elsa does move to the Northumbran enchanted forest because she feels like she belongs there better, and Anna becomes Queen of Arendelle, but it doesn't suck. They still get together and play gestures or whatever. Charades, that's the name of that game. they just still are able to get together, and the Anna agrees to get married to Kristoff, and that's a change, but they're both happy. And Olaf continues to grow older, and the change happens, and it was scary while it was happening over the course of this movie, but it ends up being okay. So you have that surface level, and then you also have underneath that, you have the respect indigenous peoples. Like, sometimes you have to make up for things that your ancestors did. I know it's not fair for you to have to pay it back, but it's also not fair for them to be, trapped in an enchanted forest and unable to see the sun for 30 years because of something your ancestors did. So you got to make that up to them, too. So, and that one is probably a little over the kids' heads, but the great thing is that as they take this inside of themselves at this young age, hopefully it sits there and is a seed to grow as they grow. And that's the great thing about, okay, yes, let's have simple morals that we can take home right now, and do something with. I understand, change happens and it's scary, but it can be good. That, you could take that and use that right now. And the other morals is a little bit more complex. It's good to have morals that can grow with you too, where you grow up and you're like, you know what? I understand what that meant in Frozen 2 now. I didn't understand it when I was younger, but I do now. So it's cool to have those different layers of morals that are in this movie. And they're both good morals. Change is scary. Gosh, even as an adult, change is scary. But it doesn't have to be bad, and it was a nice reminder to have that as well. Number 2. This movie gets dark enough for long enough that the audience is forced to deal with it until the happy ending comes after all. So towards the end of the movie, Elsa and Olaf die. And they're only dead for about 10 minutes, but I gotta tell you, it felt like a lot longer when I was watching the movie. And I, for one, was not 100% sure that they were coming back. Now, maybe I should have been, but I wasn't. And so the movie forces you to face this darkness. A lot of times, children's movies don't really have you face this level of darkness for this long. For example, Frozen 1, Anna appears to die, but she's dead for 10 seconds before she's revived by the true love that she and Elsa feel for each other. Really, she's revived by her own actions. And Elsa's appreciation, we're not going to get into that. The point is, she's not dead for very long, okay? And so you don't really have time to just feel like, oh my gosh, that just happened. And she's not coming back, and what am I gonna do? You do have long enough to do that in Frozen 2. You're like, Elsa might be dead, and Olaf might be dead, and they might never come back, and I don't know what to do. And I was helped a little bit by this because I play this game called Disney Emoji Blitz, and it's got these tips, when it's loading, and it's been telling me for a while that Anna isn't a Disney princess, and I was like, and it's like, 'cause she's the Queen of Arendelle, and I'm like, no, she's not. She's a princess. Elsa's the Queen of Arendelle, because I had only seen Frozen 1 up to this point. And so then, like, Elsa dies, and I'm like, holy crap, is Anna did I get spoiled? Is Anna the Queen of Arendelle because Elsa stays dead? Because I didn't know that Elsa goes off to the Northumbran tribe. So that kind of sold it a little bit more for me, but still. And for small children who aren't familiar with tropes as much as adults are, it's gonna be real. And they have this amazing song, The Next Right Thing, which, side note, you can see my own performance of that on my YouTube channel right now. I was that inspired by this song, but we'll come back to that. Where the lyrics, the musical writing by Kristen Anderson-Lopez and her husband Robert Lopez, I believe in their names, who wrote the musical music for this movie. They didn't write the theatrical music, like the background stuff, but they wrote like the musical songs. They're great. Anyway, so the way the music was written, and the way it's a tremendous vocal performance by Kristen Bell. Not just like, when you're singing a song, like a lot of your focus is on like, do they sing well? But she didn't just sing the song, like she injected so much emotion into it. And there was some great animation and some great choices with lighting where she really is in the darkness of this cave, and she has to get up and take one step, take another step, and climb towards the light, and kind of really gather herself and really find some resilience within herself. And so and that's what really makes it take so long, feel like it takes so long, is just you watch like step by step as Anna pulls herself back together as her best friend and her sister are gone, and she did everything she did because of them. And what is she gonna do now? And she realizes that she has to do the next right thing. And just those performances were just everything was in perfect sync to help you really sink into your own grief and then be lifted up as Anna goes, okay, like, this sucks, but we gotta move on. We gotta keep going. I've got to. This is what I have to do now. And so that's what happens, and the audience goes along for that journey with Anna, and it's just, whew, that's some good writing. When you can make the audience not only feel for the character, but feel with the character, you're doing it right. And I just have to give all the credit to Disney for being willing to go into the darkness, because I think I was going to say this earlier and I distracted myself. A lot of movies that are willing to go into darkness, they just wallow in it the entire time. They don't show you how to get out of it. Or it will be a much shorter period of darkness, more like in Frozen 1. But in this case, like, they went into it, and they went into it long enough for it to hurt, to be painful, for you to really feel it, and then to realize that you have to go with Anna and struggle out of it and move on. And then, of course, because death, permanence is not the end all be all of everything, Elsa and Olaf do come back, and we do get our happy ever after, because, sometimes when we face things that are really scary, it works out okay. And I think it's okay, even if that weren't true, as true as it is. And obviously when people die in real life, they don't come back. But it's okay it's okay for a kids movie to be like, okay, we took you to the dark place, but now you get to have your happy ending. Maybe this doesn't perfectly 100% reflect real life. But it's okay. It's a kids' movie. We took the kids on a little bit of a maturation journey. Took me on a little bit of a maturation journey where I was sobbing. Big, giant tears. But it's okay. It's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be 100% representative. It's okay to say, no, we're going to have a happy ending now. That's okay. That's not bad. It's a good thing to do that sometimes. And so I respect that choice that Disney made as well. And obviously a lot of that choice was made because you can't sell Elsa dolls if Elsa's dead, and there's so much money to be made with Elsa and Olaf dolls. So some of that happy ending is from profitability standpoint, but some of it is like, just let the kids have this one. Just let them have one. There's going to be enough depression and sadness in life. Just let them have one. And that right there is about when my phone at least, that I was using as a camera died last night. So we'll just be doing the rest of this back to the normal way of recording these things, which is probably better anyway, but that's a different thing. So, number one, the best thing about Frozen 2 is the music. So I've already talked about a couple specific songs, but the music in this movie is just so great that it deserves its own spot here to just talk about all of it together. The first movie has iconic songs like Do You Want to Build a Snowman and Let It Go, obviously Let It Go. And this movie was never going to be able to top it in that way. Part of that comes from the fact that Frozen it kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, we were all familiar with Disney movies, animated movies, what they were, what they could do, and that was fine. But Frozen just, took it to another level. Frozen 2 was never going to surprise us as well as Frozen 1. So, it doesn't make sense to try and outdo Frozen 1, because you're not going to be able to do it because you don't have the element of surprise. Which did not stop Kristen Anderson-Lopez and her husband Robert Lopez from writing the very best songs they could for this movie. The best part, to my way of thinking, is that they didn't try to just crib from their work on Frozen. They didn't try to reuse songs or themes, musical themes, but they didn't reuse other themes either. And it really felt like they kind of just started from scratch. They said, what if this was a movie that was not related to Frozen? How would we write this music? And it works really well. The songs are very different. They're also very good, but they're so very different that they're not really easily compared to the songs in the first movie. It would have been understandable for them to, for example, try to outdo Let It Go with another power ballad for Idina Menzel. That's a thing they could have tried to do that a lot of other people would have tried to do. And while they did give Idina some music to shine with songs like Into the Unknown, it's so tonally different from what Let It Go was that why would you talk about which one of them is better? They're just different. You can talk about which one you like more, but that's not the same thing as which one is better. Because they're just that different. And while I did point out earlier that Some Things Never Change is definitely a callback to Love is an Open Door. Hey, that's the name of that song. I knew I had it written down somewhere. Love is an Open Door. The subject matter is different enough that you don't compare them to determine which one is better either. You just go, oh yeah, this one reminds me in a couple of small ways of this other one. Now I feel like I am back home in the Frozen universe where I belong, but I'm not like, oh my gosh, this is exactly the same thing we've already done. It's really good. Like, to be able to pull that off, like to find that little spot in between those two things where it's like, am I in Frozen? Or I'm like, we're just doing the same thing over again. That takes a lot of skill. So one of the biggest dangers when you're writing a musical is in writing something where the music feels superfluous. So often in the worst offenders, the music is just there because we're writing a musical. We've decided it's a musical, so here is some music. And it doesn't even really continue the story at all. It doesn't add anything. You could take it out and you wouldn't lose anything.
And then the next step above that is there are examples where the lyrics do help to tell the story. They'll flesh out a character or flesh out a universe, a world where the story is happening. But the music doesn't do too much to help out. It doesn't hurt, but it's like, you could have, there's probably another way you could have done this and it wouldn't have changed that much. And then at the very top, like when you're really on it and you're doing exactly the thing that you want to do when you're writing a musical, is where the music and the lyrics combine together to make it happen in a way that it couldn't have worked better any other way. It couldn't have worked as well any other way. And the music and the lyrics, they just come together and they there's a symbiotic relationship there. And so think of A Whole New World from Aladdin. The majestic sweeping of the music underneath the lyrics helps you to get the sense of wonder that Aladdin is trying to convey to Jasmine, as well as to give that sense that she's being swept off of her feet. Another great example is Part of Your World from The Little Mermaid. And yes, I am referring back to 2 Alan Menken songs, because Alan Menken is a boss, and everyone should be more familiar with his name, and I will not rest until everyone understands just how incredible and talented Alan Menken is as a lyricist and a musical writer. But back to The Little Mermaid. The lyrics of the song help us to understand what motivates Ariel, and the music lends itself to the introspective and imaginative aspects of Ariel's personality, the curiosity, and the loneliness that she feels. Without that music building in, you wouldn't feel it as well. You wouldn't feel it as strongly. And the music of Frozen 2 does the same thing, but it does it from the bold but sometimes haunting music that helps us feel like we're going on a dangerous adventure when Elsa sings Into the Unknown, to also the alternately sad and determined notes, and it goes back and forth, like I mentioned earlier, when Anna sings The Next Right Thing as she's trying to overcome this grief and can, and tries and can, and tries and can, and tries and finally succeeds. It's just, the music makes it more than it ever could have been without the music. So those are the top 10 reasons Frozen 2 is a great movie, and actually a really good sequel to what was already one of the most beloved animated films of all time. I hope you have or will soon see this movie. I know Disney made a habit of creating unnecessary sequels to their animated films in the 90s that makes people from my generation especially a little bit leery about watching another sequel to an animated movie, where you're like, why though? Convince me why. Hopefully this video has helped convince you. It's not, the quality of this movie is such that even if it weren't a sequel, it would stand well on its own. And given that it serves as something of an apology to the Sami people for the mistakes that Disney made in creating the first Frozen, I don't know that an unplanned sequel has ever felt more necessary. I do hope you've enjoyed this video, and hopefully I was able to teach you a little something, show you a little something that you hadn't known or hadn't noticed before about Frozen 2. If you agree with me that summer is entirely overrated, and you would have loved to live a few years in a kingdom with a woman who could cool things off instantly, go ahead and tap that like button in solidarity with me. If you want to argue about the order I used for my list, go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section down below, and I will be sure to read that and correct you. Otherwise, I hope you have a beautiful day, and stay home and stay safe, and may all of your paths be paved with hexagonal snowflakes. And this is the part where I do a quick shout out to all of my beautiful patrons. Go to my Patreon, linked in the description below, and sign up for as little as $1 a month to join them in helping me make more videos like this.